The city, with its relentless rhythm, hums a song that only a select few understand. Beneath the veil of rushing cars, clattering subway trains, and the endless chatter of its people, a quieter world unfolds. A world where paws softly pad across cool alleyways, where wings slice the air with barely a whisper, and where eyes, wide and watchful, never lose sight of the city's pulse. This is the secret life of city animals, the quiet witnesses to the chaos, the silent travelers on streets that never sleep. Hello, my friend. Welcome to tonight's sleep story. My name is Serafina, and it's my pleasure to guide you into a peaceful night's rest. Take a moment. Close your eyes. Imagine the streets in the twilight hour as the city begins to soften. The hum of the world outside fades, and in its place a stillness lingers. Feel it deep in your bones. You're about to enter a world that thrives in the spaces between the noise. Before we begin this journey, remember to like this story, subscribe, and share where you're listening from. Whether you're tucked in a cozy room in the heart of the city or nestled somewhere far away, we want to know. Now, settle in as we begin. As you settle into your space, feel the weight of the world slowly slipping away. The hustle, the rush, the noise, they begin to fade, not in a sudden break, but like a soft sunset washing over the horizon, gently, patiently. In this moment, your body begins to soften, like the day giving way to night. With each breath, you let go. Deeply in and slowly out. Imagine the air filling your lungs like a soft, comforting wave that fills a peaceful, quiet shore. As you exhale, imagine the stress of the day being released, floating away like mist evaporating in the morning sun. The world outside becomes a distant memory. Now, focus on the space around you. Every sound becomes distant and soft, like whispers floating on the wind. You are becoming part of something bigger, something that is timeless. Imagine now that you are no longer in your space. Instead, you're walking slowly, gently, along a hidden path in the heart of the city. But this path is different from the usual. This is a path the city animals know well, a path woven through shadows, under rooftops, and between the trees that stand in small corners of the urban landscape. The air smells of dew, and the faintest traces of leaves mixed with the distant scent of rain on pavement. It is cool, it is quiet. As you walk, the soft crunch of gravel beneath your feet matches the rhythm of your breathing, slow and steady. You might not see them yet, but they are all around you. Small creatures, large creatures, each part of the same hidden world. A world that thrives beneath the surface, in the margins where human eyes often overlook. In the distance, the soft chirping of birds in a city park reaches your ears. You can almost feel their wings slicing through the air, moving in patterns too intricate for the human eye to follow. A raccoon, its coat still damp from the early morning dew, scurries across a rooftop, disappearing into the shadows. Somewhere above, an owl hoots softly, its call cutting through the stillness. Each sound is a note in a lullaby, familiar, soothing, and deeply calming. Let yourself breathe into the stillness. Let the weight of your body dissolve into the serenity of this place. There are no expectations here, only the quiet companionship of the city's hidden creatures. You are safe. The world is turning, but here, in this moment, it feels as though time itself has slowed. The city is alive, yes, but in ways most people never notice. The animals of the city live between the cracks, beneath the sidewalks, and in the forgotten corners. They are the true witnesses to the city's pulse, and tonight they will be your guides. The sun had long since set, leaving a wash of twilight across the sky. The streets of the city, though still bustling, began to quiet. It was the time when the heartbeat of the city slowed, just slightly, when the people retreated to their homes and the night took over. But for some, the night was just the beginning. Across the rooftops, a quiet figure moved. It was Felix, a sleek, silver tabby cat with a coat that shimmered like moonlight. Felix was a creature of the night, as comfortable in the dark as any human was in the day. His green eyes gleamed in the shadows, sharp and watchful, as he padded along the edges of the buildings. Felix had lived in the city all his life, or at least as long as any cat could. The streets and alleys were his domain. He had learned every nook, every cranny, and every rooftop like the back of his paw. Tonight, he was on a mission. There was something unusual in the air, a rustle, a disturbance that he couldn't quite place. His ears perked up at the sound of a distant crash, like something had knocked over a garbage can. With his tail twitching in silent anticipation, he crept closer to the edge of the building. Below, in the alley, he spotted a shadow moving. It wasn't the usual human, bustling along with their briefcase or bag. No, this was something else, a flicker of motion, something smaller. Felix narrowed his eyes, sensing that something was amiss. The city always had its secrets, but this felt different. He needed to investigate. Leaping with practiced grace, Felix landed on a lower roof, then down to a fire escape, and in moments he was in the alley. The smell of old cardboard, crushed cans, and the faint tang of food wafted through the air. His paws made no sound on the ground as he moved closer to the source of the disturbance. It wasn't long before he saw it. A tiny creature, no more than a blur of fur, darted across the alley. It was quick, faster than anything Felix had ever seen. His instincts screamed at him to chase it, but his mind kept him grounded. This wasn't just any stray. No, there was something special about this one. Felix's tail flicked, and he crouched low, eyes locked on the small creature. A rat? No, the shape was all wrong. This was something else, something new. The creature paused, its glowing eyes meeting Felix's. For a moment, there was a strange silence, and then, without warning, the creature disappeared into the shadows. Felix stood still, his heart racing in his chest. The alley was quiet again, but something told him this was far from over. As the soft breeze swept through the city, the stars above twinkled faintly in the sky. The city, which had seemed so chaotic just hours before, was now beginning to settle into the deep stillness of the night. The creatures who had once scurried and climbed now found their places to rest. Felix's eyes, however, remained wide open, searching. Something had changed, and the city animals, silent witnesses to this world, would have to uncover its secret. But for now, the night was still young. The air felt heavier as Felix remained in the alley, the silence almost suffocating. His heart raced, not from fear, but from curiosity. The creature that had vanished into the shadows was no ordinary animal. Felix had seen many things in his life: strays, rats, even the occasional squirrel that wandered too far from the park. But this was something different. There was something ancient about it, something wise. The night was stretching on, and Felix could sense that it was only a matter of time before the creature reappeared. He was no stranger to waiting. Patience was a virtue in the city, especially for those who lived in its hidden corners. Felix had learned to wait, watch, and listen, observing the ebb and flow of life around him like a silent sentinel. He padded silently across the alley, his tail flicking in thought as he navigated the scattered trash. The moonlight bathed the alley in a soft glow, casting long shadows that danced with the wind. The world seemed to hold its breath, as though waiting for something to unfold. And then a rustle. Felix's ears shot up. He froze, his green eyes narrowing. The shadows near the far end of the alley shifted, and there it was again, the creature. This time, Felix could make out its form more clearly. It was small, lithe, and moved with an uncanny fluidity. It wasn't a rat or a mouse. Its fur gleamed with an iridescent sheen, almost as if it were made of starlight. The creature's eyes glowed with a faint, ethereal light, a sharp contrast to the dull glow of the city lights overhead. Felix's whiskers twitched. He had never seen anything like it before. His first instinct was to chafe, to pounce and pin it down, but something about the creature's presence stopped him. It was as if it belonged to a world just out of reach, a world that Felix was only beginning to understand. The creature paused, its eyes locking onto Felix's, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Felix felt a strange pull, a magnetic force that drew him closer. The creature tilted its head as though it were studying him, just as much as he was studying it. It was almost as if it knew him, or at least knew his kind. The creature made a soft, almost melodic sound, like the wind sighing through the trees. Felix's curiosity was piqued even further. He couldn't explain it, but he felt an overwhelming urge to follow. And so, without thinking, he took a step forward. The creature, sensing his movement, darted back into the shadows, vanishing into the darkened corners of the alley. Felix's instincts screamed at him to pursue, but he paused, listening. The city hummed around him. The distant sound of cars, the murmur of voices in the distance, the occasional screech of a subway train, but beneath it all, something else stirred. A deep, resonant hum, like the beating of a heart hidden beneath the ground. Felix's eyes widened in realization. The creature wasn't just hiding, it was leading him somewhere. He didn't know where, but it was a place he was meant to go, a place that had been waiting for him. With newfound resolve, Felix crept forward, following the faint glimmer of the creature's eyes as it moved deeper into the alley, then into a narrow gap between two towering buildings. The air grew cooler as they passed into a hidden passageway, one that Felix had never noticed before. It was a forgotten part of the city, an area untouched by the noise and bustle that filled the streets. The walls of the passage were lined with cracked bricks, covered in moss, and the faint scent of earth and damp stone filled the air. The creature led him down this path, its form flickering in and out of the shadows. Felix's steps were silent, his body poised, ready to spring at a moment's notice. But the further they went, the more he felt a strange peace settle over him. It was as if the world outside had ceased to exist, leaving only this hidden, quiet realm that lay beneath the surface. As they rounded a corner, the passage opened up into a small, forgotten courtyard. The ground was overgrown with wild plants, and a single gnarled tree stood in the center, its branches stretching up toward the sky. It looked ancient, its bark twisted and dark, as though it had stood there for centuries. Felix had never seen this place before, but somehow it felt familiar. The creature paused at the base of the tree, its glowing eyes turning toward Felix. Without a word, it seemed to beckon him closer. Felix hesitated for only a moment, then padded forward, his paws making no sound on the soft earth. He approached the tree, his eyes scanning the area. It was eerily quiet, save for the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. The air felt heavy with something ancient, something timeless. Felix reached out with a tentative paw, brushing against the rough bark of the tree. The moment his paw made contact, a surge of energy rippled through him. It was like a jolt of electricity, but instead of pain, it was a deep sense of knowing. Felix staggered back, wide-eyed, his fur bristling. He had never experienced anything like this before. The world seemed to shift around him, and for a brief moment, the edges of the courtyard blurred, as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling. Then, as quickly as it had come, the sensation faded. The creature was now standing directly in front of him, its eyes glowing even brighter in the moonlight. It tilted its head once more, as if to say, "You understand now, don't you?" Felix's mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. He felt different, as though he had glimpsed something beyond the veil, something that had been hidden from him for as long as he could remember. But what was it? What had the tree shown him? The creature let out a soft chirp, as though encouraging him to look again. Felix's gaze shifted, following the direction of its eyes. The base of the tree was surrounded by thick, twisting roots. At the heart of those roots, partially buried beneath the earth, Felix noticed something glimmering. He stepped closer, his breath shallow with anticipation. He dug his paws into the soft soil, his claws scraping against something hard beneath the surface. After a few moments, he uncovered an object, a small round stone, smooth and cool to the touch. It gleamed with an otherworldly light, much like the creature's eyes. Felix held the stone in his paw, turning it over slowly. It felt heavy with significance, as though it carried the weight of something far older than the city itself. He didn't know what it was, but he could sense that it was important. The creature made a soft, almost approving noise, and Felix looked up at it. It seemed to nod, as though confirming that he had found what he was meant to find. There was still so much that he didn't understand, but one thing was clear: this was just the beginning. As Felix stood there, holding the glowing stone, he realized that the city had far more secrets than he had ever imagined, and tonight he had only begun to scratch the surface. The creature disappeared into the shadows once again, and Felix stood alone in the courtyard, the stone heavy in his paw. The city's heartbeat pulsed around him, but now, in this quiet corner, he could hear it more clearly than ever before. Felix sat quietly in the hidden courtyard, the glowing stone clutched gently in his paw. The weight of it, although small, felt immense. He could still feel the surge of energy that had passed through him when he touched the ancient tree. It was as though the stone was alive, connected to something far beyond what he could comprehend. The world around him seemed to fade for a moment, leaving only the stone, its soft glow, and the faint hum of the city's heartbeat in the distance. His fur still tingled from the touch of the tree. He had felt something stir within him, something primal, something old, something forgotten. What had the creature wanted to show him? What was the purpose of this strange connection? Felix's green eyes flicked around the courtyard, searching for the small creature, but it was gone. For the first time since he had encountered it, he felt truly alone. The silence here was different now, deeper. The city's distant noises, cars honking, the faint murmur of voices, the clatter of train wheels on tracks, seemed to fade into the background, leaving him with nothing but the sensation of the stone's cool surface in his paw. He stood, careful not to disturb the delicate balance of the earth beneath him, and padded over to the gnarled tree. The roots that wound through the soil looked ancient, twisting and curling in patterns that seemed too deliberate to be random. Felix couldn't help but feel that this tree, this hidden space, held secrets beyond anything he could imagine. He had lived in the city for as long as he could remember, but this was a world within a world, a layer of the city that most would never know existed. The stone in his paw felt lighter now, as though it were calling him, urging him to do something. Felix's tail flicked in indecision. He didn't know what was supposed to happen next. He only knew that he could not leave, not yet, not until he had unraveled the mystery. The wind stirred the leaves of the tree above him, and the faint sound of a distant owl echoed through the courtyard. It was a soft, mournful call, a sound that spoke of deep knowledge, of wisdom passed down through generations. Felix's heart beat in time with the rhythm of the night, and as he stood there, he could feel the pulse of the city, its life, its rhythm flowing through him. His mind wandered back to the creature, its glowing eyes, its soft chirps, the way it had seemed to understand him as though they shared a secret. Was it a spirit of the city, a guardian of the hidden world beneath the streets? Felix wasn't sure, but he knew one thing. It was no ordinary animal. The stone in his paw glowed faintly, and Felix felt a stirring in his chest. It wasn't just a stone. It was a key to something deeper, something that tied the city's secret life to the natural world that humans had long forgotten. The courtyard, once so still and serene, now seemed to hum with energy. Felix turned, his eyes scanning the darkened alleyway that had led him here. He felt a subtle pressure in the air, like the city was holding its breath, waiting for something. Something was about to change. Suddenly, the ground beneath his paws trembled, not enough to shake the earth, but enough to make him pause, ears pricked in attention. It was subtle, a vibration, like the earth itself was calling to him. Felix's green eyes widened. The stone, he held it closer to his chest, as though he were afraid it might slip away. The pulse of the city's heartbeat seemed to grow louder, more insistent. A whisper, almost imperceptible, filled the air. At first, it was so faint that Felix wasn't sure if he had imagined it, but then it came again, a soft, melodic whisper. It was calling to him. Felix's fur bristled, his body tense as he searched for the source of the sound. The whisper was not a voice. It was more like a feeling, a sensation deep within his bones. It beckoned him, urging him to follow, to listen, to understand. Without thinking, Felix began to move. He padded through the courtyard, toward the edge of the passageway where the alley had once been. The stone glowed brighter now, pulsing in time with the rhythm of the city, as though it were alive with energy. The whisper grew louder, clearer, and Felix could feel it pulling him forward. The narrow gap between the buildings stretched out before him, dark and foreboding, but Felix was undeterred. He had been in far darker corners of the city, had faced dangers that humans could never imagine. This was different, though. there was a purpose now. He wasn't just wandering aimlessly. He was following the call of something ancient, something buried deep beneath the streets. The alley twisted and turned, leading him further into the city's forgotten corners. The city was not just a place, it was a living, breathing entity. It had secrets, it had life, and now Felix was becoming part of that life. The whisper grew into a song, soft and haunting, like the wind rustling through the trees or the gentle ripple of a stream. It was a melody that spoke of history, of the city's ancient past, long before humans had built their towering structures and paved the streets. It was a song that had been buried for centuries, but now it was waking up. Felix's paws moved swiftly, guided by the pull of the stone in his paw. He felt as though he were no longer in control, as though the city itself were guiding him. The alleyway became narrower, and the air grew cooler, heavier. He could smell the earth now, the scent of soil and roots. The city's artificial smells, the exhaust, the concrete, the metal, began to fade away, replaced by the natural world. He turned a corner, and the narrow alley opened up into a forgotten square. The stones beneath his paws were cracked and uneven, overtaken by creeping vines and moss. In the center of the square stood a fountain, its waters long dried up, the stone cracked and worn. But what caught Felix's attention was the circle of strange symbols etched into the ground around the fountain. They were ancient, their meanings lost to time, but Felix could feel the weight of their power. The whisper was louder now, almost deafening, and Felix stepped forward, placing the stone in the center of the circle. The moment his paws made contact with the symbols, the ground trembled once more. This time it was not subtle. It was as though the earth itself was awakening, shaking off the dust of centuries. A soft glow radiated from the stone, illuminating the symbols around it. Felix stepped back, his heart pounding, as the ground beneath him cracked open, revealing a hidden path leading deep below the city. The stone pulsed in Felix's paw, as if urging him to descend. Felix hesitated, but only for a moment. The creature's eyes, the tree's energy, the strange calling he had felt in his chest, they were all leading him here. This was the moment he had been waiting for. The city was revealing its secrets, and Felix was no longer just a passive observer. He was part of the story now. He stepped forward, his paws steady, his body ready. The path beneath him descended into the unknown, the city's heartbeat echoing in the distance. As he descended deeper into the earth, the air grew cooler, the walls closer together, and the city above began to fade away. Felix felt a sense of peace wash over him, as though he were moving into a place where time itself no longer mattered. The journey was just beginning, and the secrets of the city, the ancient life of its animals, the magic hidden beneath the streets, were about to be uncovered. Felix's paws pressed softly against the cold stone as he descended further into the depths of the hidden passage. The air grew thick and cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and something ancient, something long buried beneath the weight of time. It was as if he had crossed a threshold, a line between two worlds, one that pulsed with life and the other forgotten, waiting to be rediscovered. The glowing stone in his paw illuminated the narrow corridor, casting long shadows that twisted and flickered on the walls. Each step Felix took seemed to echo in the stillness, the quiet almost unnatural. The soft hum of the city above, the distant sounds of cars, people, and trains had long since faded, leaving only the deep, rhythmic pulse of the earth. It was a heartbeat, steady and strong, as though the very foundation of the city itself was alive, breathing, waiting for something. Felix's whiskers twitched, his senses sharp as he continued his descent. He wasn't alone, not really. The feeling of being watched lingered at the back of his mind. He could almost hear the quiet scurrying of unseen creatures, the rustling of wings, the faint whisper of things moving just beyond the reach of the light. It was the underworld of the city, the forgotten realm where the creatures of the night made their home. The walls around him began to change as he moved deeper, the smooth stone giving way to jagged rock. In some places, strange symbols were etched into the surface, ancient and worn, as if they had been carved long ago by paws or claws that no longer existed. Felix paused for a moment, running his paw gently over one of the symbols. It was cool to the touch, the grooves deep and worn, as though the stone itself had been shaped by centuries of history. He wasn't sure why, but the symbols seemed to stir something inside him, something familiar, though he couldn't place it. A sense of connection washed over him, as if the ancient animals who had walked this path before him were still here, their spirits lingering, watching over the city's secrets. The stone pulsed softly in his paw, urging him onward. The deeper he went, the more the city's heartbeat grew louder, more insistent, like a drum thumping in the distance. It was calling him, guiding him, pulling him closer to something. But what? What was waiting at the end of this dark passage? What had the creature meant when it had led him here? He didn't know, but Felix had long ago learned to trust his instincts. The city had always had its mysteries, its secrets. Now he was uncovering something that had been hidden for far too long. At last, after what felt like an eternity, the passage opened into a vast, cavernous space. Felix's eyes widened as he stepped into the room, the light from the stone flickering and reflecting off the walls. The cavern stretched out before him, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with strange carvings and markings. It was ancient, and yet it felt alive, as if it had been waiting for him all along. In the center of the cavern stood a large stone altar, its surface worn and smooth, shaped by the hands of creatures long gone. The altar was surrounded by a circle of stones, each etched with more of the strange symbols that Felix had seen earlier. The stones radiated a faint energy, a pulse that seemed to resonate with the very air around him. Felix's heart raced as he approached the altar. The stone in his paw grew warmer, its glow brighter, as though it were responding to something in the cavern. He could feel it, a shift in the air, a presence that seemed to fill the space. It was as if the cavern itself was alive, waiting for him to take the next step. He placed the glowing stone gently on the altar, his paw lingering for a moment, as if to confirm that this was the right thing to do. The moment the stone made contact with the surface of the altar, a ripple of energy surged through the cavern. The walls trembled, the stones vibrating beneath his paws. Felix stepped back, his fur bristling, as the air around him seemed to grow thick with power. The symbols on the stones surrounding the altar began to glow, their light flickering like fireflies. The ground beneath Felix's paws trembled once more, and the heartbeat of the city, the deep, resonant thrum, grew louder, more pronounced. It was as though the entire cavern was coming alive, responding to the stone, responding to him. Then a voice. It was not spoken aloud, but somehow it filled his mind, clear and resonant, as though it had been there all along, waiting for him to hear it. You have come, Felix. Felix froze, his eyes wide, his breath caught in his throat. The voice was not human, not animal, but something ancient, something beyond both. It was deep, like the rumble of the earth itself, yet soft, like the wind that whispered through the trees. It was both comforting and unsettling. You have crossed the threshold, and now the path is before you. The city has called you, Felix. It has chosen you to witness its heart, to understand its secrets. But this knowledge comes with a price. The city's heartbeat is not just its own. It is the pulse of all that lives beneath the streets, and you, Felix, are bound to it now. Felix's mind raced. Was he truly ready for this? He had spent his life as a stray, a wanderer in the city, moving from one place to another, always searching for something. Meaning, purpose, a sense of belonging. But now he understood. This was more than just a journey. It was his destiny. He had been led here for a reason, and he could feel it deep in his bones. The creatures of the city's heart, the ones who dwell beneath the surface, are many. You have seen only the smallest of them, the ones who skitter in the shadows. But there are others, older, wiser, more powerful, and now you are one of them. The voice paused, as though it were waiting for Felix to comprehend what it was saying. You will not walk alone, Felix. There are those who will guide you, those who will challenge you, and those who will test you. But know this, the city is not just a place. It is a living, breathing entity. It has a will, and you are part of that will now. Felix felt the weight of those words settle over him. The city's heart, the creatures that lived beneath the surface, it was all so much larger than he had ever imagined. This was not just about survival in the city. This was about something far deeper, far older. It was about understanding the pulse of the world, the rhythms that governed all life, the threads that connected them all. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled once more, and the stone altar began to glow brighter. Felix's fur bristled as the energy in the room surged, filling the cavern with a brilliant light. The stones around the altar vibrated, and the symbols etched into them began to shift, rearranging themselves into new patterns. The heartbeat of the city thudded louder, as if it were rising to a crescendo. Felix stepped back, his eyes wide in awe as the light intensified, filling the cavern with an otherworldly glow. The city's heart had awoken, and it was calling to him. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light began to fade. The heartbeat softened, becoming a steady rhythm once more. The cavern returned to its quiet, timeless stillness, but something had changed. Felix could feel it in the air, in the very ground beneath his paw. The city had revealed its secrets, and he was now bound to them. The stone in his paw was warm, its glow fading as if it had passed its energy into him. Felix turned, his heart pounding in his chest. He knew now that his journey was far from over. There was much more to uncover, much more to understand, but the path ahead was clear. Felix was no longer just a stray, a wanderer in the city. He was part of its heartbeat, part of its ancient rhythm, and he would follow it wherever it led. Felix's paws carried him further into the shadows of the cavern, his mind racing. The energy in the air still hummed, lingering like a low, resonant chord, vibrating through his body. It was as though the stone, the symbols, and the pulse of the city had wrapped around him, tethering him to something far greater than himself. A part of him wanted to run, flee from the weight of what he had learned, but the other part of him, the deeper, older part, understood that this was no accident. This was his path. The cavern was quiet now, save for the echo of his steps, but Felix could still feel the presence of the city's heart. It was alive, breathing, waiting. The voice that had spoken to him in his mind, the voice that had been ancient, wise, and yet somehow kind, was still with him, its words floating through his consciousness like a whisper carried on the wind. You are part of the city now, Felix. Its pulse runs through you. The creatures of the deep, the ones who walk in the shadows, will be your allies. The city will reveal itself to you, but only if you are willing to see what lies beneath. Felix shivered, his fur prickling as he glanced around the cavern. The walls seemed to close in on him, the symbols etched into the stone glowing faintly in the dim light. It felt as if the cavern was watching him, waiting for him to understand its secrets, to unlock its mysteries. The deeper he went, the more he realized that this place was not just a physical location. It was a threshold, a doorway to something far older and more powerful than the city itself. Felix didn't fully understand it yet, but he could feel the weight of the knowledge, the burden that had been placed on him. He was no longer just a stray in the city, trying to survive. He was now a part of something much larger, a living, breathing force that connected all creatures of the city, from the smallest rat to the largest bird. The stone in his paw pulsed once more, and Felix's gaze turned toward the far side of the cavern. There, at the edge of his vision, he saw movement. At first, it was a flicker, a shadow darting between the rocks, but then it became clearer. Figures, dark, shifting shapes, appeared from the darkness, emerging like ghosts from the walls themselves. Felix tensed, his fur standing on end, but the creatures made no move toward him. They simply watched, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, reflecting the same eerie energy that filled the cavern. Felix felt a pull toward them, a connection, as though they were waiting for him to make the first move. He stepped forward slowly, his movements cautious, but the creatures did not retreat. Instead, they watched him with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. There were dozens of them, each one different, some larger, some smaller, but all equally enigmatic. They were not like the creatures he had known in the city above. Rats and pigeons, stray dogs, and alley cats. These were something else. These were the ancient ones, the guardians of the city's hidden life. One of the creatures stepped forward, its eyes glowing with an unearthly light. It was a cat, but not one like Felix had ever seen. Its fur was dark, shimmering like the night itself, and its eyes were deep pools of light, like stars trapped in a sea of darkness. It moved with grace, its movements fluid and deliberate, as if it were an extension of the shadows. "You have come," the cat said, its voice low and resonant, like the sound of wind through a canyon. It wasn't spoken aloud, but Felix could hear it clearly in his mind, as though the cat were communicating directly with him. Felix nodded slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't understand," he replied, his voice barely more than a whisper. "What is this place? What do you want from me?" The cat's eyes glowed brighter, and for a moment Felix thought he saw a flicker of recognition in them. It was as though the creature saw something in him that he couldn't see himself. "This place is the heart of the city," the cat replied, its voice deep and rich with meaning. "It is where all things meet, where the old world and the new, the hidden and the seen come together. You have been chosen, Felix, because you are one of the few who can see the city for what it truly is. You are not just a stray, lost in the streets. You are a part of something far greater than yourself. The city has called you, and now you must answer." Felix felt a pang of confusion and doubt. He had never asked for this. He had never asked to be a part of the city's mysteries, its ancient pulse. He had never asked to be part of something so much bigger than himself. "But I'm just a stray," Felix said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm just one animal, one small part of the city. What can I do?" The cat stepped closer, its movements graceful and fluid, its eyes never leaving Felix's. "You are not just one animal, Felix. You are the thread that ties all things together. You are the one who will bridge the gap between the city's past and its future. The city's heartbeat is in you now. You must learn to listen to it, to follow it." Felix's mind raced as he processed the words. He had always felt like an outsider in the city, a creature who moved between the cracks, unnoticed and forgotten. But now everything had changed. The city had a heartbeat, a pulse that he could feel deep inside him, and somehow he was a part of it. The creatures around him watched silently, their eyes glowing with a mixture of curiosity and approval. Felix could feel their gaze on him, each one waiting for him to make his next move. "There is much for you to learn," the cat continued. "The city's secrets are not easily understood. They are woven into the very fabric of its being. But you will learn, you must. There are dangers ahead, challenges that will test you, but you will not face them alone. We are here. We are always here." Felix's heart thudded in his chest. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew one thing for certain. He could never go back to the way things were before. He had crossed into a new world, one where the city's pulse ran through his veins, and the creatures that lived in the shadows were no longer just myths. The cat turned and began to walk away, its tail flicking with a fluid motion that seemed to blend into the darkness. Follow us, the cat said, its voice trailing off like the echo of a dream. We will show you the way. Felix hesitated for a moment, his thoughts swirling like a storm in his mind. But then, without another word, he followed the cat, stepping deeper into the cavern, his paws light and sure. The creatures that surrounded him moved silently, their glowing eyes guiding him forward. They were taking him to something important, something that would change everything. And as he walked, Felix felt a strange sense of peace settle over him. This was his purpose. This was where he belonged. The city's pulse was in him now, and he would follow it wherever it led. Good night, sweet dreams. May you rest as deeply as the creatures who walk in the shadows beneath the city's heartbeat.